I mean, I'm not saying necessarily they've thought of everything, but they thought of, something came up where someone like tried to disprove it, and then they were saying, well, you can't disprove it because, no one knows, exactly, so.
Cool. So let's
stuff
move
like
on.
that.
Chris.
Sorry. I have one question that you kind of alluded to talking to Dennis, was that with this whole thing you're even talking about, you don't know what's going to happen the next milliseconds in front of us or behind us, whether life is existence in itself, it's unreal almost in a sense. But I don't know. I've just been wondering, that I was wondering, do you ever get to the point in a day where it's just like, where you ask yourself the question and you really feel this, and you might not always feel it, where it's like, is this all there is? Like, I'm not like challenge you to think about there being God, just putting that aside for the moment. Just like, do you ever feel like, how do you feel about the idea that maybe this is all there is, to live, to be born, to live, to die? Like, how does that feel, as a person?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking and you said that's a sad thing, but, if you make life good yourself, then why does there have to be more? Why does there have to be something else? Why does there have to be an afterlife? If all we're here for is to, live, be born, live, and die, what's wrong with that? Why is that a bad thing?
Well, what I just wonder is life really good when you look down to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as good as you make it, in my opinion. Like,
It's a good idea.
we have bad things happen, I think you gotta try to flip everything, but, there are always those things that you can't flip, there are always those things that they just rub you the wrong way, or they're just too bad that you can't see a good side to it, but maybe someone could see a good side to the situation, I mean, there's, billions of perspectives, none of them are going to be exactly the same. There may be some that are similar, but none of them are going to be the same.
Yes, I will. Since we're going to have time for more questions, I want to wrap this up, and then we can ask him more questions after we're done. I want to talk about our action steps. If we sit here for an hour and talk about, maybe an hour and a half, and talk about this without having any takeaways, what are we going to do different as Christians? Then it's been a nice conversation, but there's not really much benefit to it. Okay. Oh man, let's see. There's so much I want to say and
I have a
ask.
question about that.
About
like what you just said about if there's like you can't really take anything out of it. I like the conversation.
okay, go.
Well, I was just wondering, is it like a turnoff for you if you see Christians or people that say they're Christians and are kind of hypocritical of themselves? Like, they say to do one thing, but then they go and they totally do the wrong thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's if anybody does that, about anything, yeah, I mean.
But I mean, does it like force you in more of like, not
maybe,
force you,
maybe.
but like.
Yeah, it may like kind of reinforce, my thought process, but, no, people make laws and, some of, one day they'll say that they follow that law and then they'll break it the next day, or there are people who, are good law-abiding citizens and then they'll break the law and then, they won't really, it's kind of taboo, where it's like hard to say that any one thing is good or bad, because to one person something may be good, to one person it may seem bad, and basically it's just majority rules in those cases of what's good or bad.
Let's talk about where we go from here as Christians. Let's see. I've got a bunch of questions here. We're not going to have time to go in depth in them, but let's touch on them a little bit. Do you have any quick thoughts about how we're perceived as Christians among non-believers? Like was there anything eye-opening to you tonight that you thought, wow, I never thought of it that way? Here's a non-believer telling us how we're perceived, and I just never thought of it that way. Here's something I can do that might help alleviate that. Oh, go.
I was kind of put off about we look down on people. Usually all the Christians I've hung around with, and when I've talked to, a non-believer, we treat them, like their family, like they're our brother,
Yeah, it's not 100%, but there have definitely been times where I'll say, oh, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, and they're like, really, you don't believe in God? Like that seems, I mean, there aren't many out there who do that, but it's just one of those things where it separates. It's just one more thing that can distance people,
Yeah.
but it definitely brings some people closer together. So
Right.
pros and cons, it's not black and white.
So you're saying in generality, and you're saying it doesn't apply to you, which is good. Hopefully it doesn't apply to many people in this room. But the fact that you felt that way means it has happened.
Yeah.
Okay. And this isn't a let's accuse everybody and make everybody feel like dirt. It's just an eye-opening experience saying,
Yeah.
here's some things we should think about as Christians, about how we're perceived among
Yeah, it may not be intentional either.
For
You
sure.
can unintentionally make someone feel distant or feel like they're not a part of a group. It's not always intentional. So you may have good intentions, but that may seem like a put off in you.
Go.
I think one of the things that's
Talk real loud.
yeah, I think one of the things that's important for us as Christians to realize or to do periodically is to really dissect what it is that we believe and know for sure. I know there's a verse in Peter that says that we are to be able to explain exactly what we believe in the time, and with that in mind, that also goes to say that we don't believe anything blindly that's just openly told to us, from the pulpit, or by friends that that are Christians, because obviously, first of all, any of us are not completely knowledgeable of what is and what isn't, but second of all, we as people need we need to turn to God for what we really believes, not really turn to others, and to really determine that within ourselves.
Those verses you were talking about are the verses for tonight. Two of the verses. It's 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 15 to 16. It says, always be ready to answer anyone who asks you to explain the hope you have within you, but do it with gentleness and respect. I got that verse out of last weekend's sermon from Pastor Rick. He was saying, it's funny, he talked about this exact same thing. He had a couple of verses on this point. He was saying that we bring glory to God in the way we share him with non-believers. And he was saying it's super important that we do that, as the Bible verses say, with gentleness and respect. And maybe you haven't felt that in the past, the gentleness or the respect part.
I mean, not very often, but I'm saying
Okay.
that
Yeah.
has definitely happened. I mean, there have been Christians who have killed other people, in that sense.
But not you specifically.
Well, I mean, I hope not. I hope I'm still alive. I mean, I don't know.
While we're talking about the Bible verses, let me give you the other one for tonight. As God's grace, this is 2 Corinthians 4:15. It says, as God's grace brings more and more people to Christ, there will be great thanksgiving, and God will receive more and more glory. One of the ways we glorify Christ, as Pastor Rick was saying, is by bringing more people to him. It brings more glory to Christ. So I think that's a perspective about sharing our faith that I hadn't really considered. When I think about sharing my faith, I think about helping somebody find eternal security. I don't really think about, this is a way to glorify God. So it's kind of a new perspective for me. Maybe it is for you too. And then the whole concept of